Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to the Injustice Anywhere radio program. My name is Bruce Fisher. I'm the co-founder of Injustice Anywhere. We are an all-volunteer organization working to correct wrongful convictions. We've now developed a network of websites all working to bring more attention to wrongful convictions. You can view our main website at injustice-anywhere.org. You can also Google Injustice Anywhere, and you should see our main website right there at the top of the page. We currently have 7 featured cases. Those cases are detailed on our homepage. When visiting, you will find links to Facebook and Twitter. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter in order to keep up to date with current events. Our fall newsletter is now available on the homepage. We encourage all of our listeners to download and share that newsletter with friends and relatives. The newsletter is a great way to generate discussion and may help to open the door to further conversations about a case or cases that you are interested in. Before we get started tonight, I would like to correct an error from last week's show. During that show, I misspoke and I gave out the wrong website address when discussing the Nikki Kish case. Please visit freenikki.org. That's freenyki.org to learn more about Nikki's case. You can also read Nikki's blog and listen to her music at freenikki.org, so please visit that website today. Tonight, we'll be discussing the Jamie Snow case with Tammy Alexander from the Committee to Free Jamie Snow, attorney Jen Fitzgerald, and Bill Clutter, the founder of Investigating Innocence. Jamie's case is an Injustice Anywhere featured case. Jamie Snow was wrongfully convicted in 2001 for the 1991 murder of William Little, a gas station attendant in Bloomington, Illinois. Jamie is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole in Stateville Prison in Joliet, Illinois. New information has now come to light, clearly showing that police misconduct and ineffective counsel sent the wrong man to prison for William Little's murder. Jamie Snow is innocent. Jamie's attorneys filed a federal habeas petition in May of this year, along with new motions for DNA testing. We will discuss the current status of the case with our guest tonight. Please visit freejamiesnow.com to learn more about Jamie's case. I would like to now bring on our two guests, Tam Alexander and Jen Fitzgerald. Hello, Tam. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Jen. Are you there?
Hi, Bruce. I'm right here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Welcome back to the show. Now, Tam, before we get into the details of Jamie's case, can you tell our listeners what led you to become involved in the case? This is the first time we've actually spoken on the show.
Okay. So I read a little bit about Jamie's case, just a couple of news stories that were up about 4 years ago. And I had never written to, anyone incarcerated in my life, but I felt compelled to write him, and I just said, I don't know if you did this, but I don't think you got a fair trial, and that was just from the very biased articles that I'd read. And he wrote me back and he said, I didn't do this, I'm innocent, and if you're willing to listen, I'll prove it to you. So he landed up sending, everything that he had at the time. And I'm a little slow on the uptake, so it took me about 6 months to go through everything and ask him about 1,000 questions. And I became convinced of his innocence. And as we go through this, I'll tell you exactly when I did, because I couldn't get past this one issue. But and then what do you do? I had to help him. So, we started putting some, information out about his case and reaching out and trying to get some help for him and exposure.
Well, you've certainly done a great job. Now, your group, the Committee to Free Jamie Snow, they host an annual event in Bloomington, Illinois called Postcards in the Park. And this year's postcards were sent to Erin Moriarty in hopes that she will highlight the case on CBS 48 Hours. Now, my family and I were going down on a basketball trip to Tennessee, and we were able to stop at the event. We're very happy we did because we were able to meet you along with Jamie's family and supporters. And the event also gave us the opportunity to meet Bill Clutter, who should be joining us a little later in the show. But, wow, it was a great showing there, and it really showed the strength of Jamie's support. And how did that go with the postcards? How many did you collect?
Oh, my goodness. How many did we I believe it was over 140-something this time. It was really cool because when Erin got him, she tweeted it out. So that was really awesome. But, the first one that we did was kind of on a fluke. I was going up there to see Jamie, and it was just his family and close friends, and we all just kind of showed up there. And, and then, I had notified the local press, and they came out. And, it was just like, oh, my gosh. We had, like, our handwritten posters, and, we were all talking about Jamie's innocence. And, it's kind of grown since then. The first time we wrote postcards to Jamie, and then on the second one we wrote postcards to the state's attorney, who was the new state's attorney at the time. And this last time we wrote to Erin Moriarty. So
I think that Tam, I know about this case because of Tam, and so does everybody else that has any real knowledge about this case that is not part of law enforcement or part of the defense bar, knows about this case primarily because of Tam. And I think it's important, it's very humble of her not to mention it, but I should point out that when Jamie first started talking to Tam about all of the reasons why he was factually innocent and the discovery and the police reports and all the evidence that he had to show this, there were some huge gaps in there. And Tam, which is very unusual that she's been able to do this, but actually has been filing Freedom of Information Act requests that she's able to file just as a regular citizen, saying, I would like this information, which is public information. And the reason that Jamie has pretty much this federal habeas petition right now, and the case is where it is in the procedural posture of the case, is because Tam has been able to uncover all kinds of police reports, records, things that absolutely should have been disclosed to Jamie that are totally exculpatory, that not only was he not given before trial, but that he had made repeated requests for, and Jamie simply never received. And then Tam's been fighting for this information for God knows how long, for the last 4 years, and she's been really, really successful, which just shows that you don't have to be a lawyer or a police officer or even have any background in this to make a tremendous difference. And I just wanted to make sure that I made that clear.
All excellent points. Tam is certainly the reason why our group got involved, and we're just amazed at all the work she's done independently. It really is inspiring for others that are advocating for other cases.
But not only that, when you've got a member of the general public that's getting information about the case that was never disclosed to the defense, and they're getting that information just by asking for it in a Freedom of Information Act request, then you've really got to take a step back and realize something really stinks here. Something is it's just not right when a defendant is entitled to get all of the basically the documents in the case, all of the evidence that they have against him, and anything that might allow him to defend himself, anything that's exculpatory. And as Tam will tell you, I think in a little bit, Jamie was convicted back in 2001, I believe, and he's been fighting for this information, that's just coming out now, a decade later, and there's simply there's no excuse for it. I don't know if Tam wants to talk about that a little.
Well, that's true, and not to get bogged down in
right.
credit, but there's some people really helping me in the background that are working hard to get this too. But it is, it's citizens, and
right.
we find that the public actually, we seem to get more results than somebody might in law enforcement, because we're private citizens.
This is our first radio show on this case, so I do want to start from the beginning, and then we'll move forward through to current developments. So, Tam, if we could first go over the details on the night of the murder. The murder occurred March 31st, 1991. William Little was a gas station attendant that was apparently shot for the theft of $60 in Bloomington, Illinois. Two officers arrived at the gas station. What was the scene that they described upon their arrival?
it was Easter Sunday, and there was one officer, Officer Jeff Pilo. He was across the street at what the building called the Credit Union. And then there was another officer that arrived that was sitting over to the left that was at the stop sign. And they were both watching the door. Now, they were arriving on a silent alarm. So they were watching the door and, watching everything. The only person that was in the parking lot was a person that was airing up his tires. And that's what Officer Pilo saw. When Officer Williams, who was the one that was at the intersection waiting at the stop sign watching the door, he heard Pilo call in. That would be Danny Martinez's license plate. And what Pilo said was that he didn't see any movement inside. He ran the license plate number of the blue vehicle that was on the lot, but the database was down. So at that time, he observed the male walk from his car towards the station, stop and look back towards his car, turn and walk towards the station some more, and then stop and turn around and get back into his vehicle and get in it and drive off the lot. So that was all he saw. He doesn't know whether he backed up or whether he did a U-turn, but he did state that the vehicle drove westbound on Empire Street afterwards. Then he started walking across Empire Street on the east side of the lot as he was watching the gas station. So as he was doing this, a pickup truck with two white males pulled up and started to get out of their truck. And he told them to get back in the truck and go back across the street. And he said they became a little argumentative. But that's when he noticed his tennis shoes sticking out from behind the counter. He then ordered the two to get in the truck and go across the street and wait, and he drew his weapon. And then he cleared the store and found the attendant lying lifeless on the floor. And then Officer Williams was the one that was at the intersection, and he arrived about the same time. So he was in his car. He was parked northbound on Linden. This is Empire and Linden. So he was watching in front of the station as well while Pilo approached on foot. And as I said, he heard Pilo calling the license plate over the radio. He didn't observe any movement inside the store. There was only one door, one way in and one way out. It was one of those little bitty tiny gas stations. I don't know if you remember them, but, you just barely have room to move around in them.
Right.
Neither officer saw anyone leave the station or go into the station, and both officers explicitly stated that they observed no movement inside the station. And that's pretty much the scene.
Okay. Now, what was Jamie Snow doing at the time of the murder?
He was at home with his family on the other side of town. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a phone.
And it was Easter Sunday, wasn't it? So
yeah.
So it was Easter Sunday.
Yeah, they had Easter Sunday with his in-laws, and then I believe they walked home. They lived that close to where they walked home with the kids, and then they spent the evening at home.
Now, Tam, Jamie Snow didn't have a great reputation in the town, so he was on the police radar early on when this murder occurred. Is that correct?
Yes.
That would lead to Jamie being questioned and being included in a lineup, as well as having his photos being included in photo books as the investigation progressed. I feel it's important to note that everything I've read about Jamie's prior offenses that kept him on the police radar did not involve violence of any kind. Jamie's record consisted of a petty theft charge and an obstruction of justice charge. Jamie was not a saint, but nothing in his past suggests he's the type of person willing to commit a murder in order to steal $60. But nonetheless, it's a small town. It's a murder, a major deal. This isn't the city of Chicago we're talking about. So They just went to the names that they knew when they began their investigation. Now, during the initial investigation, the police identified 3 witnesses. I have Gerardo Gutierrez, Carlos Luna, and Danny Martinez. Can you give us a brief overview of what Gutierrez and Luna claimed to see on the night of the crime?
Sure. So Gutierrez reported that around 8 p.m., he pulled into the station for gas. And while he was pumping the gas, he saw a man inside the station, and it appeared that he and the attendant were arguing. When he went into the station to pay for his gas, he handed the attendant his money, and he reported that the attendant's hands were shaking so badly that he dropped the money, that was being exchanged, like the money that he was giving back to him. So after Gutierrez went home, he heard about the shooting at the gas station and returned to the station to speak with police about what he saw. And that night, the police put together a composite drawing of the suspect based on Gutierrez's description, and that was the composite that was released. He described the man with an earring, he said he had a left earring, a fresh injury on his chin. He said it was so fresh that he saw holes in the skin from the stitches. So in the early morning of the crime, he identified a mugshot from photo books as the suspect. And this was one that another witness also agreed on. He also called the police a few days later and claimed he saw the man again in Peoria, Illinois. Gutierrez never picked out Jamie from a lineup or any of the photo books, although we know that multiple pictures of Jamie were included in the photo arrays later on.
Sure. So his statements did not point to Jamie at all. It pointed to somebody completely different, and with the original composite was quite different as well.
Yes.
Now, what about the witness from across the street, Carlos Luna?
So there was Carlos and Juan Luna, and Carlos was 14, and his cousin Juan was younger than him. I don't know exactly what age he was, but he was younger. So they lived across the street, a few houses down from the Clark station. So they claimed they were looking out the window to see if Gloria Luna was one of their family members, and they were thinking about going over there to get candy. They wanted to see if she was working. So they claimed that they saw a man come out of the station facing forward, opening the door with his left hand. And Carlos said the man had on a black coat down to his ankles, like a trench coat, and the coat was unbuttoned. He stated the man looked like he was holding something under his coat, but he couldn't see what it was. It was later determined that these two boys were about 200 feet from the station. Carlos gave a statement saying he didn't think he'd be able to identify anyone, but Juan said that he thought that maybe he could. So neither boy was able to complete a composite. I won't even go into that, but neither boy was able to complete a composite drawing that night. So the composite sketch artist determined that neither boy could provide enough details of the man's face.
Okay.
He was later asked during trial if he knew that Danny Martinez, the last witness, and he answered yes, and he also testified that he didn't see Martinez at the scene. And the reason that that's important was because I've been to the scene. If you're standing at Carlos's window, you have to look through Danny's car to see the front of the door. And
door
he
to
did
the
not,
gas station.
Yeah, he did not
Right.
see Danny Martinez there. So somebody's lying, or somebody didn't, he would have had to see Martinez, and he testified that he did not see Martinez or his car, and that he also knew him and knew his car.
And Martinez
Right,
was the one that was putting the air in the tire.
That's the last
Right,
one.
this will make more
over.
sense when we discuss Danny Martinez, but the two witnesses, their statements don't line up. Now,
The
we come
descriptions don't line up, nothing lines up.
So we come to Danny Martinez, who turns out to be the star witness in the case. He's a complex piece of this puzzle that we may have difficulty completing in the time we have, but we're going to give it a shot. What did Danny Martinez claim to see initially on the night of the murder?
Okay, so on the night of the crime, he was the one in the blue car that was putting air in his tires, and he was the only one on the scene. So he stated that he pulled into the station parking lot to get some soda or pop because they had spent the day with their, the Easter Sunday and, with their in-laws. And he came back, he had a low tire, so that's what he did 3 times a week, went and aired up that tire. And they used to get popped and, watch a movie that night. So he said that while he was down putting air in his tire, he heard 2 sounds that he thought was his car backfiring. He said he saw a man backing out of the station with a tan windbreaker-type jacket that came to his waist, and that the coat was zipped up all the way, and the guy had his hands in his pocket. Now, in the first police report, Martinez stated that as the man was backing out of the station, he got up from his position and started towards the station. He said it sounded like his car was about to die, so he stopped and turned and looked at his car, decided it would be okay, and then he turned back around, and he saw the man out of the corner of his eye around in the corner to the east side of the station heading north. He did assist in development of a composite, and it was very different from the first composite. No facial hair, no earring, no chin scar, nothing like that. It was very different from Gutierrez. So police chose to release the Gutierrez composite to the public. So on the night of the crime, Martinez was the other one. Martinez picked out 2 photos from the lineup, from the photo array, and said it's between these 2. And
do you mean a photo array, or do you mean that the live lineup?
The photo array. The night of the crime, it was a photo array.
There we go.
And we just got the pictures of those. I think within the last 2 years, we just got the pictures of those mug shots. So, and
Jamie wasn't given those before trial?
No.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
And he said it's between these 2. And then one of the photos was also the same one that Gutierrez had picked out. We don't know how that suspect was cleared. We have no idea.
Do we have the suspect's names? Is there any information at all that has been released about these 2?
I have one of their names, but I don't have.
So both Martinez and Gutierrez picked out this picture that's not Jamie Snow, and there's been no information released about that whatsoever.
None. On the night of the crime, they picked out those 2, that same picture.
What's appalling is what you're saying is that 2 eyewitnesses this night picked out the same person that was not Jamie Snow, and that mugshot, that photo that those 2 eyewitnesses picked out, was never shown to Jamie Snow or his defense counsel.
No, the first we got him through FOIA.
Tam,
that is such
Tam was
an
able
outrageous,
to get those photos. Right,
and it's absolutely inexcusable that wasn't given to Jamie prior to trial. I mean, the person that how are you supposed to assess whether the person even looks like Jamie? How the defense is inhibited in conducting their own investigation at that point to determine whether or not it was a suggestive ID, or it's absolutely unfathomable to me that the defense would try a case that they didn't have all of that information, before you start the case. It's not fair.
So it's either exculpatory or ineffective assistance of counsel. It has to be one or the other, in my opinion.
Well, there's absolutely no reason under the sun that the defense should not have been provided that information. And whether or not the defense clearly filed a motion for discovery. They should have gotten that. Whether defense counsel wasn't very aggressive in asking, the court to issue a motion to compel, hey, we still don't have these photographs of who these people were. What if the defense wanted to go out and talk with them, and find out what they were doing that night? The defense has every right to do that, and that stuff should have been turned over. And I don't know if there's any explanation for why it wasn't, but
Martinez would testify 10 years later that he didn't pick anybody out the first time.
But it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter because what if, these people were shown the same photo arrays. So, and we do know that at least one of them, Luna, pointed to, to Jamie, and I believe that was in the live lineup, but pointed to Jamie, and said, well, that kind of, when I close my eyes and I think about it, that's the one that sort of fits. There's all kinds of different procedures that we now know are lead people to pick somebody that's not the right person. Like when you're given 6 different photographs and the person's more inclined to pick out the one that looks most like the person that they saw. Well, if you don't have the other 5 photographs as you're the defense counsel, there's no way to determine whether or not, what if the other 5 photographs were black people and Jamie's a white guy,
That's exactly what we were looking for when we were trying to get these. I mean, what if it was a person of color, a different race? I mean, we had no idea what these mugshots looked like when we got them.
Right. And at the very least, you've got two different witnesses that have pointed out a person saying that looks like the guy, and it's not Jamie. So the defense was never able to go out and investigate that and pursue that, and that there's just absolutely no excuse for it. I've tried eyewitness cases where they showed the person a yearbook, complete with the people's names underneath it, male and females, all, and they said that was the lineup, and the court laughed at them. Anyway.
Right, it's incredible that the photos weren't given to the defense. When we look at the case at this point in time, we had Martinez and Gutierrez, the two adults at the scene, were completely unable to identify Jamie. There was no identification made by those two.
No.
And time goes by, in a strange twist of events, Martinez ends up going from being a defense witness to a prosecution witness. Jamie was arrested along with Susan Claycomb. They were both charged together in this crime. We'll get to that in a little bit here. But Mark Foster was an investigator working on the Claycomb case, I believe. And when he interviewed Martinez, ended up on the witness list for the defense. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And I know we're probably running out of time here, but if I can just highlight that Martinez and Carlos and Juan and all of them 3 months after the crime on 6/21 did attend an in-person lineup in which Jamie was participated.
Right.
And Martinez asked number 3 and 4 to move forward. He didn't ID him, and that becomes important later in the identification issue because he
Jamie was number 6, not number 3 or 4.
Yeah, he ultimately ID'd him from a picture of the in-person lineup like 8 years later.
So what was it that the prosecution did to cause Martinez to miraculously remember years later what he could not remember right after the crime?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. All we know is that I have the dates down here somewhere, but this was shortly before Susan Claycomb's trial.
I have it here. The prosecution called Martinez into a private meeting, and he came out of that meeting, and all of a sudden he was able to pick Jamie out of a lineup, and he was able to identify him, which is something he was unable to do in a picture, in the picture books or in a live lineup. He was unable to do it. But after he speaks to the prosecution, all of a sudden he's their star witness, and he has all the information they require.
Right.
Am I reading that wrong, or is that how it played out?
No. Well, let me clarify. There were 4 IDs that we know of, and in '93 he didn't pick anyone. In '91 he said one person looked like him. So his ID is suspect. We don't think that they took his ID seriously because he wasn't even in the grand jury. He wasn't even in the indictment. He didn't testify there. And it was 2000. It was in July of 2000 when they had already been arrested, and Foster was the investigator for Susan's trial, and he was talking to everyone on the case, and Danny Martinez's name came up. He went and talked to him, and he said was the person in the paper that you saw, was that the person that you saw that night? And he said that he told him no. And then that was like July 13th, 2000, and then on July 18th,
that's after the arrest of Claycomb and Jamie.
That was after the arrest, and that was in July 13th and July 18th. That was just a few days later because they put Danny Martinez on the defense witness list, and of course they had to turn that over, and then they pulled Danny Martinez into the state's attorney's office, and he ID'd Jamie from that lineup that he attended in 1991, a picture of that lineup.
So Jamie goes to the lineup. Right. Jamie goes to the live lineup in 1991. Pulls out number 3 and number 4, if I'm correct, right? Pulls out number 3 and said, kind of looks like that guy. Doesn't say a word about Jamie, can't identify Jamie. The final identification, the one that makes the police say, okay, he's our star witness, is that he looks at a photograph taken of that same live lineup that he's already saw, and that weeks after the murder, and says, no, the guy's not there, and says, that's the guy, and picks out Jamie Snow. He's already seen that exact lineup. And
8 or 9 years later.
9 years later, he says, "Oh no, that's the guy right there." I mean, that's just it's nonsense.
And that's currently seen as credible.
That was his ID. That was what kind of pushed them over. That made him a state's witness. I mean,
yeah,
that's it. Oh, we've got a positive ID.
He was the star witness, and we might have to backtrack here a little bit because, and especially like in 1993, Detective Crow testified. He didn't testify in 93, but he testified that in 1993, that photo array contained multiple photos of Jamie, which is against all reason too. You can't have multiple photos of one suspect and not the others.
Absolutely not.
But
and it
he
violates all the.
He
still didn't pick out Jamie Snow.
Correct.
So that's why. We had 4 opportunities for him to pick him out, and in fact, he picked out others. And then, 10 years later, he has a private meeting at the state's attorney's office, basically, and IDs him from the lineup, but ends up testifying that he, in fact, ID'd Jamie when they were arrested from the paper. That's what he says. He ID'd him from the paper.
Right, which is an inherently suggestive identification to begin with. I mean, anybody that follows the Ryan Ferguson case knows that. When you see somebody that in an article and it says, "Oh, the police think this is the guy that did it," that's when it starts jogging. Oh yeah, because you assume that the police are correct, and that should never, ever, ever be the source of your investigation. In fact, of your identification, that's what poisons. Sort of taints the identification, because if the person already knows who you suspect, then you've got a tainted investigation. They're more inclined to lean that way, and that's why there's all these protocols now that we have nowadays for all kinds of procedures that police should be setting forth when they get an identification from somebody. Because believe it or not, 75% of wrongful convictions occur because they identify the wrong person.
Right.
Now, is Jamie's conviction secured based solely on this identification?
No, it has also has jailhouse informants.
Which is another one of the leading causes of wrongful conviction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a long gap in between this case. It went from 1991 till 1999. What was Jamie doing with his life in that time frame?
Well, he moved, when he was arrested, he was living in Florida. He was working for a tree business. He moved down there and had his tree business going on. He didn't want to have anything to do with Bloomington. And he was starting his own business. He had, his kids down there and his family down there, living with him for a while, and then, as much as they could. And, he was doing really well.
Okay, because this is a long time for a case to go on. Apparently, Detective Crow, the original detective, did not feel there was enough to bring this case to trial. And then over time, 2 new detectives took over the case, and they built the case primarily on the jailhouse snitches?
Yeah, because they were indicted on snitches. It really doesn't take a whole lot to get indicted. But they were indicted on snitches because, recall, they were already arrested by the time Martinez came around and
right.
ID'd. He never ID'd, and he said that he testified that he saw the paper and he saw the picture in the paper, said that's the guy, and told his spouse, and that was the only person that he ever told. And there was 10 months between that time that paper came out and that meeting in the state's attorney's office occurred. And what happened with Foster, after he ID'd him, then Foster went back to ask him about something else, and he said, "Hey, I got to tell you off the record, I ID'd Jamie Snow as the person." And he said, he was asking him questions what, you told me that wasn't him, or whatever. And he said, well, it's my understanding, he said it over and over, what Foster testified, he said it over and over, it's my understanding that they have a lot of evidence against them too. They wouldn't be in jail, and they wouldn't be, they wouldn't have arrested them if they didn't have enough evidence.
Exactly. And that's precisely the problem with people that make eyewitness identifications with them knowing who the police suspect. They assume the police must have gotten it right. And so you have somebody like Martinez who gives the cops what they want, figuring no harm, no foul. They've got the right guy. They just, all right, fine, yeah, that's the guy that did it.
They had some jailhouse snitches, and none of their stories really lined up, but they didn't care about that. They loaded them all together. They put it with Martinez, and they put him on trial.
Yes.
And they won.
Not against Susan, but they won against
Not
Jamie.
against Susan, right, because that's the next question. She was acquitted and Jamie was convicted. Was that primarily because he had ineffective counsel, or were they pretty much keyed in on him from the beginning? Were they just playing Susan to see if she would go against Jamie, or did Jamie really become the victim of a really bad lawyer?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, that's the theory. So we had Susan Cleckholm, who was Jamie's sister-in-law, and they apparently did not get along ever. She was very dear friends, like a sister to Jamie's wife. And, so they spent a lot of time together, years together, but they didn't so much get along. But when they arrested her, because everybody was like, well, what, because they don't even hang out together. They wouldn't go anywhere alone together. They wouldn't, much less commit a crime together. But they told her that they offered her a deal when she was arrested. She had a child. She was pregnant while she was waiting in county jail. She had a child while she was awaiting trial. And she would not roll over. And what
roll over meaning?
She would not testify against him.
She wouldn't take a deal.
They offered her parole.
Yep.
They offered her parole. She could walk if she said that she dropped him off.
Right.
And
she's facing a life sentence. She's facing a life sentence on this.
And she doesn't even like Jamie.
And
right.
She didn't do it, and she had that was a tremendous pressure. So, we have to wonder, okay, Susan wouldn't roll, and it was like, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before her trial.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Danny Martinez comes up and is a star witness in the case.
Right.
And Susan did end up testifying for Jamie in his trial. She did testify for him, for the defense,
Well, there was also a big difference, what Bruce was saying about the ineffective assistance of counsel. It's my understanding from reading everything I've read on this case is that there's two major sort of themes in this, and one is extreme police misconduct in the way that they in some cases you have inadvertently the police didn't turn over this particular document, or the prosecutor didn't know about it, or we didn't realize it was exculpatory. In this case, you've got police actually what appears to be, turning over documents that are duplicates with some changes made. You've got also, so you've got evidence not being turned over to the defense and literally altering documents and turning them over to the defense. Then you've also, on the other hand, you've got poor quality, ineffective assistance of counsel that is unquestionable. I mean, Jamie Snow's trial counsel has subsequently, I believe, been disbarred, and I believe he was even indicted and convicted of defrauding one of his clients. He was a admitted severe alcoholic who admitted to drinking during the trial. Not, he would go home and tie one on, but this was an alcoholic that had reached the stage that he needed to drink just to maintain himself. I think that in the court's ruling on one of his ineffective assistance motions, the judge pointed out that this is a case of something like 54 witnesses. It's hard to keep all those witnesses straight in your mind if you're the trial judge, just sort of being the referee, never mind having to prepare and cross-examine and to be on your toes in defending a case that has that many witnesses. And Jamie just got the raw end of the stick there, and you just can't do it, and especially when you've got to be as alert and on your toes as you have to be when you've got police that are not playing with a full deck. That's the wrong analogy, but when they're basically hiding things from you, there's no room to be anything but super alert, and that's why Jamie's where he is now.
Yeah, and Susan had a private attorney, and he was brilliant. If you read his arguments,
yep.
He dismantled Danny Martinez's ID.
Yep.
He dismantled everyone, and it was strategic.
Now I've read that Jamie's
and
attorney sat in on that trial.
He did.
Why didn't he use that information at Jamie's trial?
He was paid by the state to sit in on that trial.
From start to finish.
From start to finish. Have no idea why he didn't use half of the evidence that they had or the strategy. It's like night and day.
From everything I've read about this case,
it's
a textbook case of ineffective counsel. Now, I want to tell our listeners here that in the final segment, we will be taking phone calls. Please call the number 347-850-1478 with questions or comments. Now, we're going to bring on Bill Clutter, who is the founder of Investigating Innocence. So their organization has recently taken on this case. So I'd like to bring him on to discuss the case. Then after Bill is on for 15 minutes, at around 9 o'clock, we're going to go over the current habeas petition that's been filed in the federal court and discuss some of the DNA tests that have been requested by the defense. But first, I'd like to bring on Bill to discuss his organization. Hello, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Very happy to have you.
Thank you. Well, let me just say a couple words about Investigating Innocence. This is a national innocence project that we launched earlier this year. The core of our members are private investigators and criminal defense lawyers. And we're starting to gain a little bit of steam as an organization. Our first featured case was the David Cam case, David Cam, for those of you who may be unfamiliar, was convicted in 2000 of killing his wife and 2 kids. He was convicted based on bloodstain evidence, and he walked out of prison a free man just 3 weeks ago. So, but we're looking forward to working on Jamie's case, and I'm honored to be a part of that defense team now.
Well, congratulations on the David Cam case. That was a long-fought battle that I only started following after I met you over the summer. And once I started reading up on that case, it was one of those that just took hold of you, and you couldn't let it go until you found out that, thankfully, it ended correctly after 3 trials and how many years? 13 years?
Yeah. And,
so congratulations on your work with that case.
The case, the evidence couldn't have been stronger or clearer of his innocence, and yet, it took 13 years to free him. So hopefully,
in 3 trials,
we don't have such high hurdles in future cases, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So
now, what was it a specific detail that led you to take interest in Jamie's case, or was it the case as a whole that left you to think that they got it wrong? I mean, as we've discussed tonight, there was multiple errors that occurred in this case and just outright egregious misconduct. But was it one thing that really got your attention when you first started looking at the case?
Well, I think the thing that is the biggest red flag of this case is that there was such a long lapse between the time of the crime and the time of arrest. I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but almost 9 years.
Yep.
Do I have that right?
That's right.
Yeah, and that I find just extraordinary. I mean, and that is something that's typical to a lot of these cases where you have you have a case that's a high-profile case. There's a lot of pressure to solve these, and in a lot of cases that I've been involved, it's been a lag of several years where they indict an innocent person and get a conviction, and that to me is probably the most glaring thing about James' case, and in addition to the the multiple inconsistencies in statements of so-called eyewitnesses who convicted them. I mean, that's, again, it's eyewitness misidentification is one of the leading causes of wrongful convictions, and I think Jamie's case is one of those poster cases of how that happens.
In the long pause in between the time of the crime and the time of his arrest, I think it's important to note also that, generally speaking, when you have a case like that, there's some sort of trigger, like they found the murder weapon, or they found some witness that they never knew existed, and lo and behold, now we know who did it, and now let's charge him. In this case, they're really, apart from some snitches coming forward whenever the opportunity arose, such as they got arrested and they needed some, favorable treatment. Apart from that, there was no smoking gun or no piece of evidence that sort of got thrown down on the desk of the lead detective that made him go, aha, now let's charge Jamie. The identification was a guy that identified him from a picture that he had already viewed 9 years earlier, and which just kind of shows
in person.
Right, in person, exactly.
Well, you might have touched on this already, but I think the other thing that's kind of striking about Jamie's case is that the initial lead investigator had him polygraphed. He passed the polygraph, and that investigator seemed to be satisfied with the polygraph. And it wasn't until a new set of investigators got on board the case they started looking back at old suspects and settled on Jamie. I mean, that's my understanding and reading of some of the materials I've looked at. But
that was the exact point I was just about to make, is the original investigator that retired, he retired believing that Jamie Snow had nothing to do with this case. He couldn't prove the case. And then two young, new ambitious detectives took over the case, wanting to solve a cold case, and they built this case. In my mind, they fabricated this case against Jamie Snow. But it was a different set of different set of investigators that brought the case to where it is today.
I would like to point out, yes, they did, and I would also like to point out that there is already a case overturned by one of the detectives, Detective Katz, who was one of the rookie detectives that took over this case, where all of a sudden all these jailhouse informants came forward and said, Jamie told me he did it. He was found in another case that was overturned for giving favors and paying a witness in a case. And it was overturned. That has already been found. He's collecting a pension right now.
Right.
Because he's retired. And he's done this. We know he's done this.
And there's reward money out there, isn't there, that nobody can account for?
No, and we're still pursuing, and hopefully the Attorney General, seems to be really interested in where that reward money went to as well. And we would like to know if anybody got paid in this case. We need to know. You guys can call us on our tip line or whatever, but we need to know if you got paid in this case. It's important.
So you mentioned the tip line. What is the tip line number that you have set up?
888-815-9299. And
that can also be found at freejamiesnow.com, right there on the front page on the right-hand side.
Yes.
Now, Bill, I know you cannot disclose information that is currently in development, things that you are investigating, but do we have reasons to be optimistic with Jamie's case? Are there some promising leads that are currently being pursued?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's, as you know, these things take time. It always amazes me that even when you have DNA proving the real killer, as you did in David Cam and the Rolando Cruz case, or the confession of the real killer, as you had in the Julie Ray Harper case. I mean, it's difficult to get justice when you have to go back to the local courts and fight the local prosecutors. And, until we get an Innocence Commission that is truly independent, that can review these claims, that's really the fastest way to get justice. But now hopefully with a federal habeas, we'll get an independent review by a federal judge, and I think that'll be the turning point in the case.
Because Jamie really hasn't had a review or a fair review. I believe that the state court sort of turned him down almost as a matter of course, just without even really any real explanation.
No, we have been fighting for a post-conviction hearing.
Right.
Not a new trial. All this time we've been fighting since 2010.
Right.
We've been fighting for a post-conviction hearing.
And for people that don't understand what that is, a post-conviction hearing is basically a hearing where you're able to present things to the court to say, hey, we didn't know this at the time of trial, or anything that's didn't come out in the trial. I guess is the best way I can explain it. And so Jamie has all of this stuff that he's been working for the last 9 years to try and free himself and to try and get to the bottom of it, and he's just looking for a day in court, and he hasn't been able to secure that really yet.
So for those that don't keep track of how the court process works, all of Jamie's appeals have been denied by written letter. Jamie's case has not seen a courtroom since his conviction, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Well, he had a hearing in appellate court.
An evidentiary hearing?
Okay, so
No, he
had a
oral
court
arguments.
hearing? He was in the courtroom?
I'm sorry, oral arguments.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's never been an evidentiary hearing at post-conviction?
Nope. No.
And this, which is amazing, given all that has been uncovered with Tam's Freedom of Information Act request. I mean, there is just an outrageous amount of information and documents and so forth that should have been turned over to the defense that weren't. And there's nothing. It's got to be so frustrating because there's nothing that you can do until you can get them before the court. It's great to have all that stuff, but so. Hopefully now, with the
now, if
the
some of
federal
these discoveries, Tam, have they been made after the state has already rejected the appeals, or some of these discoveries being seen for the first time by the federal court, or were they already denied by the state court?
Actually, we do have some in the federal have. Jen might want to address that more, but we can go into the DNA motions. And I guess the first thing, we have a DNA motion before the McLean County Circuit Court, and we have a what's called a successive post-conviction petition, which means a second post-conviction petition with even more new evidence, asking them to give us a day in court so we can look, have these witnesses, 15 plus, 17 plus now, that have given us affidavits to so a judge can sit there and both sides can sit there and ask them questions, and vet it out. But in the successive PC, we have a polygraph worksheet that we found from Jamie's polygraph that he took in 1994, where there's a note on there. And we got this from a FOIA from the Illinois State Police that says that there's a little note in 400 pages of lab reports and on a worksheet on a polygraph that the person wrote, the polygrapher wrote, he was referring to Danny Martinez, and he says this is not the person that he saw.
Right.
Which is a huge piece of evidence.
Yeah.
In 1994, basically, Danny Martinez said that Jamie's polygraph results from two witnesses that testified against Jamie. And Jamie has been trying to get those for 13 years. And we just got them this year. What they did was they gave us the results, they gave the defense the results, but blocked out the actual results. So in other words, all the questions and everything, and whited out the answer, whether they passed or failed. Well, they both
And
failed.
this is all new information that is first being seen by the federal court. This was not available for the state level appeals, correct?
Yes. Well, this is in the PC, but I believe the polygraphs, Jen, are in the HABE as well.
Yep, they are.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay. And then we have an affidavit from one of the informants, someone that was related to one of the informants that said that he told her, that he lied and that he was pressured into doing it and that he had to do it to get a deal. Which we knew this, but because of his record, we understand that that he got a deal, but this is just more. That just furthers that claim.
This is just ridiculous. Bill, you've been looking at cases like this for many, many years. Why do you think that these jailhouse snitches still carry so much weight during trials? Why do they have any credibility at all?
Well, the short answer is they don't have much credibility whatsoever. But, juries, seem to put stock in it unless, you really attack and impeach the credibility of the snitch. In Bloomington back, years ago when we were trying the Rolando Cruz, Alejandro Hernandez case, the Nicaraguo case, we had disclosure of a jailhouse snitch. So we had some work. We had people behind the scenes feeding us information showing a direct pipeline where the state's attorney's office was granting favors to these snitches. And, unless you can develop that type of evidence to impeach their credibility, jurors, they listen to it and they accept it.
And it's
they absorb it.
Yeah.
It's something that they have to turn over. Let there be no mistake about it. The prosecution has an absolute duty to turn over to the defense, hey, we cut a deal with this guy, because that goes to their credibility. And the problem is when people are believing these snitches that they're not fully disclosing that information, or they're saying, oh, we didn't make any deals with him. He didn't get any benefit. And then, you turn around and you look and he's got 4 years shaved off his sentence or something like that.
Well, I should also add that these were the same prosecutors that got indicted later for misconduct.
Right.
So,
right.
In that case, we were fortunate to be able to develop the evidence ourselves. It was never disclosed to us, although it should have been, as Jen pointed out.
Right,
so with the
that's
snitch
the problem.
testimony in this case, it comes back to, sadly, that he had ineffective counsel. Because if they were properly cross-examined, many of them would have been discredited. I mean, I read the.
I think
so?
I think it's ineffective assistance of counsel. But if counsel is not given, if you've got a prosecutor and police that are saying we didn't give them any benefit for that, they just came to us and they're just saying this out of the goodness of their heart. At the time of trial, you've got nothing to counter that, then that's the argument that the jury is that's what they're arguing in the jury room. Why would he come in and say that? He's not, getting out of jail early, or he's not, they didn't say that he's got a deal or anything like that. You're kind of stuck. So, which is why it's misconduct, and which is why, the prosecutors in Rolando's case, one of the reasons why they were criminally prosecuted.
So we're looking at misconduct on both sides of the aisle here.
We're looking at misconduct and ineffective assistance of counsel. I think, and that's my opinion. That's my opinion. Correct.
But here's the game they play with the jailhouse snitches. I mean, the prosecutors, in preparing the jailhouse snitch, will say, you testify, wink, wink, nod, nod.
Yep.
But boy, we sure would like your cooperation. And they'd go, I can't promise you anything, but they wait till after they testify and then cut the deal.
Right.
It's a
unwritten tacit agreement,
Right. You're going to help me, and of course I'm going to help you, but I can't tell you I'm going to help you until after you testify.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's Tim uncovered in the Freedom of Information Act, I think, a bunch of letters from, I can't remember the witness's name, but handwritten letters to police and prosecutors saying, gosh, I really wish I could have given you more information, and now I'm in this jam. I think the guy had a DUI or something, and now I'm in this jam, and, I really would like, maybe we could help each other or something to that effect. I mean, it's that kind of stuff, that obviously gives the jury a reason to look at the testimony of that particular person with a little bit more suspicion than, hey, I'm just coming in here because I had nothing to do today. I'm just sitting in jail, and he happened to confess to me, so I'm just
you need full disclosure.
here to tell you what he said.
Time's flying by here tonight. Bill, I'd really like to thank you for coming on the show. I know you're pressed for time. You're traveling, working on another case, and you still made time to come on the show, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to working on Jamie's case.
Beautiful. Thank you
and I want
much.
to encourage all of our listeners to visit investigatinginnocence.org. That is the organization Bill has started. It's a great organization. The website looks fantastic. He's added Jamie Snow's case and another case we're working on, Jeffrey Habbard. He's also involved with that. That's a case that Jen and I are working really closely with. So I truly appreciate everything you do, Bill, and thanks again for being on tonight.
Okay, and I should also give mention the Darlie Routier case in Texas, another blood-stained case, and we'll be looking at that case as well. So thanks again. And
excellent.
All right, everybody have
Thanks,
a good night.
Thanks, you, Bill.
Okay, I'd like to wrap up the show here. We'll do because we went a little long with our earlier conversation, but I think it was well worth it. The current petition that's in front of the federal court, if we could go over, a few of the major points that are being presented. I know you just mentioned some of them, Tam, with the conversation with Bill, but is there anything that we should really highlight that is currently for the court in that petition?
What I would like to highlight is we also have a DNA motion before the circuit court, and the reason that I'm not focusing on the federal Hague is that that's an abeyance until these matters are settled.
Okay, so the DNA is the pressing matter currently right now.
Yes. The DNA motion, I'd just like to highlight that has no physical evidence ever matched Jamie. But, we have found there were fingerprints, there was blood, there was evidence of a struggle, there were bullets recovered from the body, and all of that can be tested with new technology, which, needs to be tested. We've
and
found
there's a statute,
FOIA.
is there not? Is that how you're doing it?
Yes.
There's a statute in Illinois that specifically for that reason, that as time passes we develop new strategies and techniques, and so it's my understanding Jamie has, as a matter of right. Exactly.
There's certainly new technology available today that was not available at the time of his trial. There's no doubt about it.
Right. And if you've got the right guy, what do you really have to? Why not?
And that's the problem. We're understanding that the state is fighting this motion, but there's no physical evidence linking Jamie to this crime. Yet we have, we found a lab report through FOIA. There could possibly be 21 latent fingerprints. There were only 9 mentioned before trial.
7 of which have been unaccounted for.
Exactly. We need to figure out.
I don't know when the last time they ran it through the national database was, but.
Right. There's a question about the blood. When the blood sample from the lab report, she said she got the sample. She opened it. It was, exhibit number 2. The envelope was empty, so they got another one to her, and it matched the victim. So, we need complete discovery, on the lab reports, exactly what happened, with this DNA. We know we would like touch DNA performed on the clothes. There was a stool knocked over. Both William Little's parents said that he always said that he would never just give up money, that he would fight. Yep. And also, if you look at the register trail, minutes before the silent alarm went off, there were I don't remember the number, but it was 4 or 5 no sales.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they've pretty much got it down to the time, in all likelihood, that this person was standing there.
Yes. Because a no sale means when you're, back in the day when I was a cashier.
Right. Oh, no, I think it still does.
You have to push a no sale to open the register.
Right.
So that means that the register must have been pushed, the drawer must have been pushed back in, and then somebody pushed no sale again, and then it was pushed back in.
Which means
then somebody pushed
register.
it again. So what was happening there? Something was going on right there, with the no sale. So there's evidence of a struggle. So there could be, cells on his clothes. The bullets now
which they still have, correct?
Yes.
That was going to
Yes.
be my question.
And
was everything properly preserved?
as far as we know.
Yep. There's just so I can make it clear, under the statute that Tam's talking about, there are a number of sort of prerequisites that would make somebody qualified to benefit from that statute, meaning as long as I think 5 conditions are met, then you are entitled under the statute to have any evidence tested. And one of them is that it's been properly preserved. Another one is that, your identity is an issue. In other words, that it was a whodunit kind of case, that, the evidence either was not tested at all or was tested, but they were really very archaic tests. We have some new testing that can really give us more information than we could never have known before. So there are a lot of things that are put in there to weed out the kind of cases that people are just going to say, hey, I want my stuff tested too, and so that we're not wasting our time. And all of the protocol fits Jamie's case to a T. And nowadays it's not very relatively speaking, it's not very expensive. It doesn't take, a lot of manpower. He's just simply asking that the evidence be tested. He's not asking that evidence that points to him be thrown out. He's saying, hey, you've got this stuff. Why not test it? He's so positive I did it.
Yeah, and the other point is that the Exoneration Project, his attorneys from the Exoneration Project have said, even in the DNA motion, that they will pay for everything.
Right.
At an independent lab. So this is not going to cost the state. This is no burden on the state whatsoever.
Right.
And it
would be an independent, court-approved, certified lab, so it's
yes.
not that they're going to send it to, the defendant's mother to have her, take a look at it in her chemistry set in her kitchen. This is, the state would be out nothing.
The state's attorney can sit back and say yes, no, when, it really doesn't have, what is it to him if it's tested, and they're not paying for it?
Once they get a conviction, they don't want anything tested. They
exactly,
consider the
but
case.
He's the only one that can lose out on this.
No, it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But we see it all the time.
But he's the one that can make the decision, which is. Because we have tried.
Now, were any of these tests previously denied, or is this the first time due to new technology?
No, the DNA motion went before it was denied.
But not as far as prior to trial. There was not a whole lot of forensic examination being done.
I mean, they tested the fingerprints. They said one was good. There were 9. There was one good to run through APHIS. And
that
they
was in
didn't
91.
match anyone. Yeah, they tried.
So anybody that's been arrested since 1991, if they are the person whose fingerprint that was, they're just going to kind of slip right under the radar.
Yeah, but that's not even true though, because I saw that it doesn't stay in there.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Unless okay, yeah, gotcha.
What Jen is saying, they could run it through again.
Run it through APHIS again?
Yeah, it needs to be.
So that's one of the requests currently on the fingerprints.
Yes, and also DNA on the fingerprints, because now they can get DNA from a smudge.
Yep.
So it doesn't even matter if they can run it through APHIS necessarily. They can get, and there's a question as to where these fingerprints came from, because we have a CSI dude who said, we fingerprinted the counter and the cash register and everything else, but the only thing that presented at trial were stuff on the glass door, which is a gas station.
Right, and that's the other thing is that with fingerprints or something like that, they don't want to do DNA testing if there is clearly a alternative source of it, and that it's not going to really be dispositive of the case if there is somebody else's fingerprint on the door, because there should be tons of people's fingerprint on the door, but there shouldn't be tons of people's blood under the counter. There shouldn't be tons of people's blood, right there next to, where the victim was. If it's not the victim's blood, it's somebody's blood.
And now, maybe, we don't know, but it's a long shot, you can get touch DNA off of a bullet that was loaded that was recovered inside someone's
Wow,
body.
I've never heard of
Because
that, but I won't doubt it.
Yeah, we don't
well, that's
have
the
we
David
don't have a
Cam
murder
case.
weapon.
To mention another case again, the David Cam case was just solved, where he was freed based on such DNA because another suspect, his DNA was found on 3 of the victims, but that technology wasn't available before, and they fought endlessly in that case to keep that information out of the courtroom. And these are things that I just don't understand. Just being an everyday citizen, I don't understand why you block that information. You get a conviction and you don't want to be proven wrong.
That Judge Anderson, just as most people know, just spent 5 days out of a 10-day jail sentence because he withheld evidence. Michael Morton was wrongfully convicted and spent 25 years in jail. He fought for 6 years to get the court to order that a particular bandana that had blood on it, that just be DNA tested. And the district attorney's office fought that tooth and nail. And lo and behold, finally the court said, you know what, enough's enough, just test the damn thing. They test it, and it not only shows that it's not Michael Morton's blood, but it shows whose blood it is. And had they done that way back in the day, they might have saved another human being, because that particular person not only killed Michael Morton's wife, but went on to kill somebody else a year later. So if you've got the tools available to you to be more certain about, whether or not you have the right person, why not? Why not?
I'm at a loss for words when I hear these things, because I'm amazed that there's resistance there. Now, so just to be clear, the DNA, those requests are still at the state level.
Yes.
Correct.
And then the federal petition is
right. It's a state
the federal
statute,
petition is kind of on hold as they waiting for that decision to come through.
Yes.
Correct, because they're going to be needing, if it comes back, with evidence that's, no matter what it comes back with, it's something that is probably going to be incorporated into the federal habeas petition, because they're looking for evidence. They're not looking for a court ruling on anything in particular. They're just looking to basically have this stuff tested and then do something with it from there.
But
so there's still a chance that the state level could order an evidentiary hearing based on these DNA tests? If these DNA tests were approved? So it's not officially at the federal level yet.
If it was tested, it could change the whole game.
Of course.
I mean, what if it was tested and it was a suspect?
What if it was the guy that they picked out in the photo lineup, for example?
Exactly.
Yeah, that guy that they've never investigated at all. That just amazes me.
I don't think that there's anything pending apart from these particular motions, though, in this. Oh, of course there is. There is the post-conviction. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
It could be a game changer in both the federal court and the state court. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's no time frame the state has to approve or deny the tests, the requests for testing?
There's probably a time frame under the statute that the defendant has to bring it, and then I'm not real familiar with the Illinois procedural, the nitpicky procedural rules about the timing, but Tam might know more about that.
We're trying to get a hearing right now. As far as we know, what we're getting back is they're very resistant to test anything, and they're going to fight it. It's unfortunate.
And that's right. And
that's more years.
Right. Well, the bottom line is that he's entitled to it under the statute. At least it seems pretty clear to me. If the state objects to that, they can say, you know what, fine, we'll test it. Here you go. Either you go test it, or we'll test it, or where do you want to test it? Let's both agree on a place and have it overseen by some private entity, and then they do it. Or they can say, forget it. We don't think that you're entitled to it, and they fight it in court. And in this particular case, I think it's pretty clear cut that he's under the statute. I mean, I don't know what the state is alleging in their opposition, but the evidence exists. It's been preserved. It was an ID issue in the case.
They're saying it's a gas station. What they said last time was, well, it's a gas station, and
it wouldn't be dispositive.
There was another case in McLean County where a guy is trying to get testing, and I thought it was very unfortunate that the state's attorney went on record, I guess, on the newspaper. Anyways, he was quoted as saying that well, I don't want anyone innocent in prison, but it has to be, but if it's not going to absolutely prove their innocence, then I think it's, I can't remember what he said. Pretty much like
it's finality of judgment.
No, he said it's a fishing expedition, but that is not what the statute says. It has to further your claim of actual innocence. It does not have to exonerate you, and it says that in the statute.
Right. I think
and that's an unfortunate quote from a state's attorney, I think.
Right. Well, I
for
think
him to say it has to prove it.
The problem is that, for example, with the fingerprints, if you're talking about a gas station, and if the whole case hinged on these fingerprints, and Jamie was arguing, I want these tested because I'm telling you, they're not my prints, and the state's sitting there going, we don't care if they're your prints. They could be anybody's prints. It doesn't mean anything. It's not relevant to the case. But that's not the situation here. There's blood in the gas station. There's fingerprints right where the struggle, supposedly, occurred. So I can understand the state's point where they don't want, everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming forward and saying, hey, I want it tested, and when it comes out not being them, as it very well shouldn't in a lot of cases, I'm going, aha, I'm innocent. That's just going to tie everything up. But that's just not the case here. No matter how you look at it.
Right.
That's not what Jamie's looking to test.
It's a gas station, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's a pretty weak argument. So we're once again, it's a waiting game for Jamie, his family, and his supporters, waiting for the state to make a decision regarding the DNA. Right. So once we hear back from them, we'll have both of you back on the show, and we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it further, and we'll get more into the federal petition as well, as it appears that this case will most likely end up in a federal court. But I don't want to sound pessimistic. We'll wait and see what the state has to offer. And you have both been so thorough tonight. You've both been so thorough tonight. We don't have any calls. Well, there's a lot of activity on Facebook, but nobody has called in with a question, so you must have answered them all.
I just want to make sure that we leave people that with this, which is first of all, go to freejamiesnow.org, is it, or freejamiesnow.com? I'm sorry, because
I made that mistake last week with Free Nikki.
What you've got here is you've got a guy who had an alibi, who's got alibi witnesses, who was accused of robbing a gas station and murdering the attendant. There's not a smidge of physical evidence that suggests that he was there. You've got a couple of eyewitnesses that have at first, described somebody that didn't even look like Jamie. They were not able to pick him out, and then, lo and behold, after a whole new set of police officers start investigating the same people, they pick him out. That Jamie had an attorney that was an alcoholic that has been disbarred and I believe criminally indicted. He had the cards stacked against him, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've got an innocent guy in prison, and all of the information's right there in front of you, and you should be mad about it. You should be mad that this has happened, and you will be if you go take a look at it. And I just really want to encourage people to just see for yourself that we're not dressing anything up in any way that to mislead or anything. It's the situation is that bad.
Excellent point. Before we end the show, I'd really like to ask Tam. I know you spoke to Jamie recently. How is he holding up? How is he doing?
He goes back and forth. He's a really funny guy, and he makes jokes a lot. But I think he's not in a good place right now. He's having a hard time. It's always hard when you're waiting for a decision.
Right.
That's the worst. I mean, because it's like buying a lottery ticket and you're waiting, till Wednesday night for hope. You get 3 days of hope, and you go back and forth, and how are you going to deal with it? When you're in a 6x9 cell,
right,
and you're not exposed, he doesn't see everything, everybody fighting for him.
Right.
We try to let him know as much as we can, but you have to know that they're isolated in there. He has 6 kids. He has 4 grandchildren. He's met one of his grandchildren. He has a son he's never met. and because she was pregnant when he went in, and it's hard. It's hard, and I hope everybody remembers that day after day and day after day, that's his life, in and out. And I think it's different if you committed the crime than it is if you're sitting there innocent in prison and having to live that life and not being able to help your family and having to constantly ask for help and assistance. And honestly, right now, he's
really in need of some good news.
He needs some good news.
Now, is he currently able to receive mail? Is there information on freejamiesnow.com that people can send letters to him? I know that they have. It's a tough prison he's in. I know that there's a lot of lockdowns, and he's dealing with a lot in that prison. From everything I've read, is he able to receive mail?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always receive mail. It's illegal for them to not allow you to receive mail.
Right. Exactly.
So
they might delay it a little while and blame the mail room.
So now all of the directions for that are currently on freejamiesnow.com.
Yeah. What he wants for Christmas are pictures of food, and I think he told me last time.
Pictures of food?
Yes. He said. Everybody says they don't want to send me anything because they don't want to make me feel bad, but really it doesn't make me feel bad. I want pictures of food. I want the big spreads.
Oh, boy.
That's very interesting, but that's something I think we can all do.
Yeah.
I think we can accommodate that. But I'd like to thank you both for being on the show. Jen, thanks again for coming on. You're always excellent. You have a lot of professional expertise, and you really add a lot of insight to these cases. So thanks for coming on again. And Sam, I'm glad that we were able to do the show.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much, both of you, very, very much. We appreciate it.
All right.
I'm sure we'll see each other soon online. So thank you for being on.
And again, I encourage everybody to go to freejamiesnow.com. It's a really it's a riveting case. So if anything, just take a look and come to your own conclusion. Take care, guys.
Thank you both.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, we will not have a show next week due to the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll return Tuesday, December 3rd at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, as always. Please check our main website, injustice-anywhere.org, for show details. Once again, you can learn more about Jamie's case at freejamiesnow.com. And please, another reminder, please go to our main website. It's injustice-anywhere.org, and download our newsletter. Our fall newsletter is available right there on the homepage. Please share that with family and friends. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Good night.